All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Greg Lindberg. I am serving this evening as Mayor Pro Tem. I'm the Ward 3 Council member here for the City of St. Louis Park. I'd like to welcome everybody here this evening. As you all know, the City of St. Louis Park has a long history of leading the way in environmental stewardship. And the St. Louis Park City Council's consideration of a draft zero waste packaging ordinance is just another example of that leadership. We're considering this zero waste packaging ordinance for a couple of reasons: to help increase traditional and organics recycling, and to help reduce waste and environmental impacts from disposable food and beverage packaging. Before considering the policy, we wanted to be educated along the way. In late July, we heard from the City of Minneapolis on their Green to Go ordinance and a number of other experts in solid waste and packaging industries as well. Tonight, we look forward to hearing the public's comment in our efforts to best understand and make a policy decision in this area. After tonight's listening session, the council and city staff will consider the input that we hear, and assuming the council decides to move forward, a final draft ordinance will be made available for public comment prior to public hearing on that ordinance. More information is available both on the ordinance and on our process in a handout that's available both at the door tonight, and further information that's available on the city's website as well. Before moving forward, I'd like to welcome members of our Environment and Sustainability Commission, Sustainable SLP, who are here with us tonight as part of this listening session. And I would also like to introduce tonight's facilitator. Bridget Gothberg is with us again, helping to facilitate this process. Bridget has been a St. Louis Park resident since worked for the city since 1998. She's actually a Ward 3 council member, lives in Ward 3 council resident. I'm having a hard time with words tonight. Lives in St. Louis Park. You'd probably do a better job at this point. And comes with us a vast history and knowledge of facilitating public conversation. So thank you, Bridget, for helping lead this conversation tonight.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, actually. I'm proud to be part of St. Louis Park and a group that allows people to speak out about what they believe. I think that's important. As we do this, understand that this is you giving your viewpoints to the city council people. So hence, when you talk, you will be looking to them. But I'm talking to you right now. So to just tell you what we're going to do, you've gotten cards, and we've asked you to put them up here so that I could call you when it's time to speak. We will call your name, so you'll know who it is. Speaking time allotted is 3 minutes and 20 seconds per speakers. And I will let you know when it is time to wrap up. I'll give you just a little tap so that you know you have about a half hour, whoa, about a half a minute before it's time to do that. You can only take one. We ask people that only take one, and not pass on your stuff to somebody else. And we also have instructions if you just want to write something. The cards are out there in the front. Some of you have taken them up and written it. Kayla Fisher, want to raise your hand, Kayla? She would be there, and she would take those. And people who are watching television will find out where to email it or mail it to Kayla so that we can get all of the voices heard. And you can also share via My St. Louis Park at www.mystlouispark.org. This session will be done on Channel 17. Carla Worth will also be taking notes so that we know what we're doing here and that we keep it alive as we go when it finishes. So I'm very pleased that you're going to do this, and we will be broadcast on Channel 17 shortly after this session. So I am ready to work with you if you're ready to work with me. So let's start. And John Easter, we would like to hear from you.
Okay, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight to talk about the zero waste packaging proposal. It focuses on reusable, returnable, recyclable, and compostable materials. And I would like to, and I'm representing the American Chemistry Council Midwest region, which is the upper Midwest, including Minnesota. I want to focus on two other locations that actually recycle polystyrene and plastics that are in this region, and we would suggest that you consider recycling as opposed to a ban also. First is Denver, and in Denver, the Alpine Waste and Recycling to Recycle Foam in the Denver metro area is a organization that has provided residents and commercial companies in the Denver metro area to soon add polystyrene foam food service packaging such as egg cartons, meat trays, and protective packaging to their recycling bins. Alpine Waste and Recycling in Commerce City is the first recipient of a recently launched North American funding program designed to increase the collection, processing, and marketing of post-consumer polystyrene foam. And the materials are used to make polystyrene foam into bricks, and there are various uses for that, so there is a market. Alpine is the largest independent privately held waste and recycling company in Colorado. I think you would have those kinds of opportunities in the Minneapolis area. The second city that I'll mention is just down the road on Interstate 35, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where recently the city has adopted a policy for residents to encourage recycling of polystyrene foam. The Iowa DNR, Department of Natural Resources, awarded the city $20,000 grant to purchase a densifier, and with another $20,000 coming from cost savings to add to their recycling center for this purpose. The point is that recycling is an option for polystyrene foam. We would strongly encourage you to add that to the plastics under the recycling provision in your proposed policy that you have here. I think I'll stop there and turn it back over to the moderator. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we have Marie Treglia. And if you have one of these things, you can raise, and you'll go get that.
I think she's waiting to start the timer. Good evening, and thank you. My name's Marie Treglia. I am the Global Manager for Government Affairs and the Environment for Dark Container. And I wanted to talk briefly on the ordinance as well. And I know one of the goals when I read the ordinance is to increase recycling, and that was stated again this evening. And I would again encourage that to actually be the case and not limit it to the 3 plastics that you have noted for recycling. I would encourage it to be foam recycling included, as well as look at alternative methods for the other recycling, waste to energy for other materials. We do produce foam, but we produce a variety of different materials for food service packaging. One of the things that you can do with foam, it can be recycled. This is actually a sample of a picture frame. This is 100% foam that's been recycled. I'm happy to pass it around if you want to look at it. And it can be turned into also crown molding and other durable plastic items. It doesn't have to be limited to picture frames. But I would highly encourage the city. There's other cities that have done this. There's over 60 cities in California that do curbside collection of foam for recycling. We have collection going on in Highland Park, Illinois. Like you, several years ago, Highland Park was thinking they wanted to ban foam. We had an opportunity to work with them. They decided, let's not take away people's choice and increase costs by making go to other materials. Instead, let's start recycling, and they piggybacked off a pre-existing e-waste recycling they had going on. So it was a way now that they offer, and this has gone on for about 5 years currently. They're very happy with it. We've seen it in Yonkers in New York, they're recycling. So there's cities throughout the U.S. It's not limited to one area. And with that, I'm happy to take other questions, but I would definitely encourage to give it consideration to recycling of polystyrene foam.
Thank you. And just so you know, council is truly here to listen. That's why they're not raising their hands and asking questions. They want to take in what you're having to say. And our next person is Tim Wilker. Tim Wilker? Oh, there he is. left after this, so if you care to do something, raise your hand and Reg will go get that for you.
Thank you, members of the council. I'm Tim Wilkin with the Minnesota Beverage Association. I wasn't planning on speaking today, but I wanted this issue brought to your attention that the cold cups that are used for beverages, your common beverages that you use with fountain drinks, those are actually lined. They are lined with what's called a PE or polyethylene to make sure that they don't ooze the beverage out of the cup. And my understanding, I'm not an expert at it, but my understanding is many of the alternatives fail much sooner, and therefore you've got quality issues with your customers. So Minneapolis took that into consideration, and they included that as an exemption in their ordinance, or not in their ordinance, but through their exemption process. So I wanted to bring that to your attention that that's another material that you're going to need a solution for one way or another. So thank you.
Thank you. Margaret Rod. Wow, so fast. I know.
Hi, thanks for doing the listening session. I'm surprised and sad there aren't more excited citizens here to speak against polystyrene or for the ban of polystyrene in our community. I was at the plastic bag event, but I came suddenly and was unprepared. This time I'm prepared. And in fact, it's a much bigger issue. I have to say, on banning polystyrene in St. Louis Park, this is a no-brainer to me. Polystyrene is a known carcinogen. Irrefutable in animals, and I think anytime you see irrefutable evidence of carcinogenic effects on animals, you know that they're also affecting our human bodies as well, as we are animals. And oddly, it's a carcinogen whose effects increase with exposure to heat, to fatty foods, and to acidic foods. So if you think about the way we use polystyrene, you will become aware that we, in fact, increase its carcinogenic qualities in the ways that we use it to store hot and fatty foods. I did some research through Clean Water Action and learned that, makes sense, polystyrene impacts low-income communities. The use of polystyrene impacts low-income individuals at a higher rate than non-low-income communities, because those communities tend to use fast food to-go containers, McDonald's and so forth, more than the general or the non-low-income population. So we are looking at an equity issue too, I think, here in St. Louis Park. So the workers who make these products are sick. They have lymphoma and leukemia. They have neurotoxin diseases caused by neurotoxins. Again, a lot of research on that. Neurotoxins affect us in all kinds of weird and creepy ways. Brain diseases, color difference, sound changes in how we hear sound, all kinds of things that ought to alarm us, and we ought to be looking to reduce the incidence of that in our community as well as the world. Polystyrene breaks up in such a way that it's most harmful to us in the environment. It is, what's the word? The sun breaks it down, and then it also breaks down into tiny little pieces, and so it goes down our drains and into our lakes and oceans and gets in our water, and also our marine animals eat it. And we humans have been, 100% of humans have polystyrene in their fatty tissue because of how pervasive it is in our environment. That ought to alarm us. We ought to do something about that. It never goes away. Finally, there are alternatives to polystyrene, many that are similarly priced within 2 or 3 cents per item. Probably over time it'll get even better. And there's some cities in California, as well as I'm sure other cities, that have made this change and have shown it to not impact businesses in any negative way. And you've probably already done your research on that, but I could show you where it is if you want to look at it. Thank you.
Thank you. Now remember, if you want to speak, raise your hand so that you can get it for us, okay? Thank you. Gail Gomer? Did I say Gomer? Okay. Welcome.
You know, strangely enough, our takeout and delivery company, Gail's Pizza up on Minnetonka Boulevard, uses polystyrene, but not for any hot or fatty foods. It's for, we use it for salads, ice cream. There is nothing else that is going to allow us to deliver ice cream to customers. You know, it keeps the product cold, especially on hot summer days. There isn't anything else. I'm sorry, but I think I thought everybody might have been aware of that federal court decision in the District of New York. New York City initiated a ban on polystyrene and styrofoam products, and it was declared unconstitutional as arbitrary because polystyrene and styrofoam containers are cheaper to turn into something else, to recycle, than paper. We kind of need styrofoam containers in our business. It's kind of like we needed bags in our business, and we would be priced out of the market. We'd need another employee to, on that charging for bags. We wouldn't be able to compete with anybody in the other cities, and we deliver all over, basically west of Highway 100, just about everywhere to Lake Minnetonka, and down to 494 and up almost to 694. Very large delivery area, and we'd be put out of business. With this one, there are products that just can't, you can't deliver them if you don't use styrofoam. Ice cream is the obvious example, but polystyrofoam keeps the food, it keeps the salads better. It doesn't, they wilt with cardboard. I think cardboard, maybe it seems to react and soak up moisture. I mean, things end up being wilted in cardboard. They end up fresh and crisp when we put the salad together 25 minutes before the customer gets it. That case in New York, the federal court found that the New York City would actually profit by recycling styrofoam because it was so inexpensive to recycle. And this is one of the products. Rulers. All kinds of school supplies can be made with this, not just those bricks that Guy was talking about earlier. I appreciate being allowed to say something, and I'd like to hand these out. Thank you.
We have Dan McElroy.
Thank you. I'm here on behalf of the Minnesota Restaurant Association and the Minnesota Lodging Association. We have three brief comments. One, we applaud the industry for calling on St. Louis Park to take a leadership approach through recycling rather than the prohibition. I hope the New York court case gives us all some pause. It was found that the presumption that polystyrene foam and rigid polystyrene isn't recyclable wasn't consistent with the facts, and a federal judge threw out New York's ban. So we applaud a recycling approach. We also have two concerns about the other approach. One is that you will need to think about a very practical approach for granting exceptions. As Tim Wilkin mentioned, there are the alternatives to a polyethylene lined or PE lined paper cup aren't quite as good today, and they're more expensive. That's true of both cold and hot cups. There are at the moment several Dairy Queens in your community. They don't have a good alternative for what's called a treat cup that was designed to be made of PPE or polyethylene. And that's a challenge for them. They aren't sure how they would operate if they couldn't use a rigid polystyrene treat cup. Same is true of cold drink cups and hot drink cups and a handful of other packaging. That may change. Minneapolis has been granting 1 or 2 year waivers, and we'll review those if the market changes. But waivers need to be practical. And then thirdly, we're concerned about enforcement and concerned about food service establishments being asked to pay for additional cost of enforcement. Minneapolis has an easy method because they have their own health department. They have added, as I understand it, a half-page kind of checklist to their process. It was said at one of your previous meetings that Hennepin County is not inclined to want to enforce this through their health department. I haven't asked the Minnesota Department of Health if they would be interested. They're not enforcing anything like this anywhere else in the state. So enforcement is an issue. We know you'll find a way to do that, but we're concerned about what it would cost and who would pay for it. So thank you for allowing me to make those brief comments.
Thank you. We have 2 more going. If somebody else is going to do something, they should raise their hand and somebody will bring you a thing if you haven't already spoken. But for right now, we've got Emily Barker.
Actually, if you want, the next person wants to go.
Oh, okay. Okay, then Mike Levy, you're the next to go. The 3-month-old.
Yes, thank you, Bridget, and thank you for having me. My name's Mike Levy with the Plastics Food Service Packaging Group, and we previously submitted quite a bit of information for the record in May and July. I appreciate that. Before I talk about the zero waste ordinance specifically, I did want to address some of the issues that the speaker raised earlier about the health effects. I am not an epidemiologist or a toxicologist, but I will tell you that styrene should not be confused with polystyrene. And I've provided you with information. The FDA has approved polystyrene for 50 years. No one's ever gotten sick from this, no workers. But more importantly, polystyrene shouldn't be confused with styrene. Styrene is a liquid. It's used to make polystyrene products. Polystyrene products are solids. By the time you make insulation or food service, there's very little in there. And the same people that talked about styrene said, this is Dr. Linda Birnbaum of the National Toxicology Program, when it comes to polystyrene, let me tell you right away that there are no health effects related to finished products. Styrene is not an issue. So again, I want you to understand that people confuse styrene with polystyrene. I want to add to the zero waste ordinance, we would like to see this expanded to be recycled, to include foam. And I have a few reasons for that. You heard the first speaker talk about it's recyclable in all the other cities as well. This is true. And more importantly, the New York City reference, which was just talked about, in December 2013, New York City wanted to ban polystyrene foam strictly because they didn't think it fit the organics program. There's kind of a hearing there. They said it couldn't be recycled. That was overturned on the basis just recently, last month, by a judge. Number one, polystyrene is recycled and recyclable, so it fits the definition. But number two, the judge found that there were plenty of markets available for it and basically said that the decision that New York City made in their law back in 2013 was null and void because they didn't take into consideration. So they're basically now, hopefully, going to be one of the largest cities to add foam to already their recycling. The other reason that we would like to see the zero waste ordinance here included is until a composting infrastructure, we support composting. You know, you're great at yard waste and food waste and organics. Compostable food service is a different issue. You have to develop the infrastructure to collect it all, the alternatives to plastics and others. You then have to have an approved facility. It takes time to do that. So until you do that, we don't see a reason that you have to ban the other materials that are recyclable. And again, this includes foam. At the July session, you heard both Madeline from the Minnesota Pollution Control Board and Paul from the Hennepin County Energy both say that the reason that they didn't take a position on polystyrene from a waste disposal standpoint is not an issue here. It's handled in the HERC facility, just like all the food service waste. You're already recovering this material. So in a way, if you added recoverable and recyclable and included not just polystyrene, but some of the others in there, I think you'd be covered. That's all the time I have, I guess. Oh, I got 4 more seconds. Thank you.
Emily Barker and
so this is his second debut. Daddy is teaching a class tonight. I thought it might just be me, but good evening. Thanks for opening this up. So I have just a few things. So I actually, generally speaking, support this ordinance. I feel like there are some things that need to happen to make it a bit stronger, and I've written you a few of those. One thing is, and I appreciate Kayla and the staff's response of calling this a polystyrene ban, because that's not all that it is. I recently had an opportunity to be in on a waste sort of some material from the state capitol, and I just want to show you guys, I only printed 2 to reduce waste here, a few items on there that they deemed as currently trash because they're either plastic-lined paper or this mix of foam paper cups, you know, those ones that are like nobody's ever quite sure what they are, plastic-lined plates, and then polystyrene lids. Pretty much every hot cup lid is polystyrene. So the thing just to keep in mind is that this ban is effectively a lot more than just foam. So you want to be just conscious of that when you're talking about what you're asking business owners to do. So I personally do think we need to move. I would encourage the council to push harder on the reusable and returnable piece, because I feel like that really is what we need to be encouraging. Minnesota state law does allow people to bring their own takeout containers. Most people think can't do it. Health department says no. Health department says that as long as the wait staff don't touch the containers, consumers can absolutely bring their own reusable containers for takeout. So most people don't know that. And I think that's everybody talks about bring your own bag, and that's hard, and it is awkward. Believe me, the first time I ever took my own reusable container to a restaurant, it's sort of weird because you kind of feel like you're sneaking into the thing when the waiter's not looking, but it is something that's possible, and I do think that that's something that I would like to see the council push a little harder on, instead of sort of things that are further down the hierarchy, as we say. I share the concern with the gentleman before that New York City did just go backwards on this because of the issue of recyclability, depending on the markets and who's willing to collect and pay for it. Plastics are all over the place, and so I do think that we have the potential to see more pushback from the folks who manufacture expanded polystyrene for potential recycling. So I would encourage the council to consider eliminating the specific use list of plastics to allow your staff more flexibility. Maybe it's something they define every 5 years or something, what is deemed recyclable based on what our waste haulers are willing to collect. But I hesitate to set up a list of something that you've got to go back every time you want to define something as recyclable. A couple of other things, I know that, let's see here, there was just one kind of general comment. I really think that the requiring businesses to set up a collection program is really important. And to the other gentleman's comment, fortunately, St. Louis Park does have an organics program, and many of our businesses have the opportunity to take advantage of that program. And so I think that pushing for compostables is great. There is a challenge for some to find reasonable alternatives. I was just thinking of our friends over at Park Place Yogurt, that those containers are plastic lined. So there are a lot of folks who do use material on site too, that's not just going home, that those systems would be good for. So in general, I think you guys have a great start. I would encourage you to continue some thinking on this, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Bridget. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time this evening to come out and comment. It's always been our priority as a council to make sure that we listen and think through these policy decisions in totality. So thanks again. Thank you as well to the members of our Environment and Sustainability Commission for being here this evening. Thank you all for joining us. If you did not have the opportunity or still would like to provide comments, you certainly can do that either in writing to us or through the city's website electronically. All of our contact information up here is also available electronically to get in touch with us. The next step is for the council to discuss these comments and a myriad of other information that we've had presented to us over the course of time in this issue in a study session in the upcoming weeks. Once we do that, if the council decides to move this policy forward, a final draft ordinance will be prepared, and at that time, businesses and residents as well will have another opportunity to provide comment on that final draft during a final public hearing. Information about opportunities to provide input, again, to the council will continue to be shared and communicated with residents through all of our various communication channels. So again, I appreciate your attendance, the time that you took this evening to come out and join us. Thank you for being part of this conversation, and have a great evening.